Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with the next video in the countdown towards the resumption of the 2020 Candidates Tournament, which was cut short back in March because of the corona pandemic threat. It's all going to start again on Sunday, November 1st, and on Chess to Impress we're counting down towards the great event by looking at the earlier 29 candidate cycles in the history of the World Championship, which started in 1883 in London when Johannes Zukertort won the tournament ahead of Wilhelm Steinitz, and because of that those two players played the first official World Championship match 3 years later. Steinitz qualified in St. Petersburg 1895-1896 for a rematch against world champion Lasker. Paul Keres won the Netherlands tournament in 1938 but did not get a match because of World War II interfering. The first official candidates tournament was held in Budapest and Moscow in 1950 and was won by David Bronstein. Vasily Smyslov won 2 candidate cycles, Zurich 1953 and Amsterdam 1956. The great Misha Tal won in Yugoslavia 1959 to qualify for the World Championship match against Michael Botvinnik. Tal became world champion the year after by beating Botvinnik. It is there in red because we're going to look at a game from that candidates tournament. Tigran Petrosyan won the next cycle and Boris Spassky won 2 candidate cycles. By then, the candidates tournament had been replaced by candidate matches. Bobby Fischer won the next one by beating Tigran Petrosyan in the last match in Buenos Aires in 1971, and the year after he became the 11th world champion. Anatoly Karpov beat Viktor Korchnoi in 1974, qualified for the match against Fischer. That match unfortunately never happened and Karpov became world champion. Viktor Korchnoi then won 2 candidate cycles and lost twice to Karpov in a world championship match. Garry Kasparov came on the scene by winning the next candidate cycle. He became world champion in 1985. Karpov then won 2 cycles. He beat Andrei Sokolov in Linares 1987 and Jan Timman in Kuala Lumpur 1990. And in 1993 it was Nigel Short's turn. He beat Timman in the final and qualified to play Kasparov. Anand was Kasparov's next opponent, and it should have been Alexei Shirov to play Kasparov after beating Kramnik in Cazorla 1998, but Shirov never got a match. Kramnik did and became the 14th world champion in the year 2000. Peter Leko was Kramnik's challenger by winning Dortmund 2002, and in 2007 we had a World Championship tournament and 4 players qualified for that event: Aronian, Gelfand, Grishuk and Leko. Anand became world champion and then played Topalov, Gelfand and Carlsen after those 3 players won the next candidate cycles. Carlsen beat Anand, but Anand came back by winning the candidates tournament in Khanty-Mansiysk 2014 for a rematch against Carlsen. Karyakin and Caruana were Carlsen's next opponents by winning the next candidate cycles and only lost to Carlsen in a tiebreak. So who will it be? Yekaterinburg 2020. It's all going to start very soon. So in this video we'll look at Yugoslavia 1959. The candidates tournament was held in 3 cities in Yugoslavia: Bled, Zagreb and Belgrade. The top 2 players from the previous tournament, Smyslov and Keres, were seeded directly into the candidates tournament and joined by the top 6 from the Portoroz Interzonal. Portoroz was a city also in Yugoslavia. Nowadays it is in Slovenia. The 1959 candidates tournament was a grueling event. The players played each other 4 times, so it was a total of 28 rounds. Misha Tal won all 4 of his games against young Bobby Fischer, who was 16 years old at the time. He was the youngest candidate in history until Magnus Carlsen qualified for the 2007 candidates. And here we have the table of that event. Tal finishing in first place, a point and a half ahead of Paul Keres. And you can see that the Soviets were dominating the event. All 4 Soviet participants occupied the first 4 places. Bobby Fischer came joint 5th with Svetozar Gligoric. And a nice picture from the event where we see Paul Keres on the left. He finished in 2nd place against 16-year-old Bobby Fischer. The man standing there with his arms folded is Paul Benko. In this video we're going to look at a game from round 8, so the first round of the second cycle. White, the eventual winner, Misha Tal. Black, the former challenger of the World Championship match, Vasily Smyslov. It is the 18th of September 1959 and Tal opened with the e-pawn. Smyslov played a Caro-Kann, and now d4 is the main move, but Tal played d3. He had prepared this line for this game. d5 from Smyslov, knight d2 and e5. Knight gf3, and here bishop d6 is the more natural move which was played in later years, as explained by Garry Kasparov, who analyzes this game in his book My Great Predecessors. And I'm taking Kasparov's comments for this video. In 1959, bishop d6 was not played. Smyslov played knight d7. And look at this move, d3, d4, playing with the same pawn in the opening. Only beginners and super grandmasters can play like this. As Kasparov writes, Tal has spotted a lack of harmony in black's position. What black could have played is e takes d4, and then the line goes e takes d5, c takes, knight takes d4, and knight g2 f6, and this was much safer for black than what we'll see in the game. But Smyslov never liked to create weaknesses in his own position, explains Kasparov, and this pawn on d5 is now a weakness in this line. So Smyslov played it differently. He took on e4 instead. Knight takes, e takes, and queen takes, and black does not have that weak pawn on d5. Kasparov explains white's rapid development and domination in the center guarantees him an enduring initiative. Knight gf6, bishop g5, bishop e7, and here Tal castled. Kasparov explains that a big advantage would have been given by knight d6 check instead. Black then has to take, queen takes, queen e7 check, and the queens come off the boards. Two bishops for white in an open position are not easy to neutralize, says Tal in his comments on this game. Kasparov writes that with amazing psychological insight, Tal guessed that Smyslov would feel more confident in an inferior endgame than in a double-edged middle game, and decided to keep the queens on the board. So he did not go for that knight d6 check variation. As mentioned, he castled on the ninth move. Smyslov castled as well, and now knight d6, and this move is now less effective as black does not have to take on d6. The king is not in check. The king was on e8 in a previous variation, but now it's safely on g8. Queen a5 and bishop c4, and Tal writes, my initiative could be maintained and developed only with the help of a piece sacrifice. And that is what Tal had seen here already when he played bishop c4, because b5 was played by Smyslov attacking the bishop. Kasparov says a rapid and natural reply. In order not to end up worse, white has to fabricate something extraordinary, but it was precisely this that Tal was aiming for. He does not save his bishop. Bishop b3 would have been a mistake because of c5 attacking the queen, and if the queen moves, then c5, c4 comes, and the bishop will be trapped. So instead of playing the bishop away, Tal played bishop back to d2, attacking the queen. Kasparov writes the bishop switches with gain of tempo to the long diagonal, where it will be well employed and will have two key functions: to terrorize the opponent's king and defend its own. In addition, the g5 square is vacated for the queen, the main conductor of the impending attack. So as we'll see later, this bishop will land on c3, will protect its own king, and will attack the black king. And this queen will end up on the g5 square, which was vacated by white. Very interesting and insightful to get Kasparov explanations. Smyslov's queen is attacked, he played queen a6, and now knight f5. After this aggressive leap, it becomes clear that white is intending to create an attack on g7 and in the event of g7, g6 to exploit the weakening of the dark squares, explains Kasparov. Also, this bishop is now attacked, is not defended, and Smyslov played the bishop back to d8, keeping the knight on f6 supported, which is the key piece of the defense. Queen h4, and here Bobby Fischer speaks up and says white is giving up a bishop without any material compensation, simply with the aim on creating an attack. This is one of the most unusual sacrifices that I've ever seen. It is typical of Tal's courageous style. He's not especially interested in who has the advantage and whether his own position is safe. The main thing for him is to find that blow, that spectacular breakthrough, which will bring him victory. Nice words from Bobby Fischer explaining that Queen h4 move. And yes, there goes the bishop, b takes c4. Smyslov picks up that piece. Queen g5, we were promised the queen on that square, and there she is, with a threat, a checkmate threat on g7. Here Kasparov gives a lot of analysis. Knight e8 would protect against a checkmate, and also the move g7, g6 would do the trick. But knight h5 was the move played by Smyslov, and Kasparov says this is a bold decision, essentially an attempt to play for a win. By returning the piece, Smyslov gains time for his counter-attack. Quite amazing play in this game, not just by Tal, but also by Smyslov. Indeed, he's given the piece back, but don't take it. Don't take queen takes h5, because then knight f6 attacking the queen. Queen back to g5, and now the bishop on c8 has been opened up and can take on f5. Queen takes and queen takes a2, and that is better for black. So Tal has to be careful. You cannot just take that piece back. Tal saw it and played knight h6 check. Black is an easy move. He only has one legal move. Play the king to h8, and now Tal took the piece. Can black take on h6? That would be a bad move because of bishop c3 check, f6, and queen takes h6, and white's attack is decisive. So after queen takes h5, black cannot take the knight on h6. Smyslov saw that and took the pawn on a2 instead. And now bishop c3, we were also promised that move. The bishop on the long diagonal, combining attack with defense. And again, Kasparov gives a ton of variations here. He analyzes bishop f6 or bishop c7. But in the game, Smyslov played knight f6, and that move deserves a double question mark. Kasparov writes, at the moment when the skills were on the point of tipping in black's favor, Smyslov makes a fatal error, failing to withstand Tal's devilish pressure. The mistake proved to be Smyslov's first and last mistake in this game. If you have not seen this game yet and you want to look for the thunderous blow that Tal delivers now, you can put the video on pause and have a look, but it's not easy. Smyslov had not seen it, Tal found it. Queen takes f7 was the 19th move. What a move. Can you take the queen? No, you can't, because if you take it, it might be another moment to put the video on pause and have a look yourself. This is a lot easier. How does white win here? He wins with rook takes d8 check. And if you put a knight on g8, we have a smothered mate. Knight takes f7 is checkmate. He can also not play rook e8 instead of taking the queen, because of a queen sacrifice after all. Queen g8 check. And no matter how you take the queen, you will get checkmated. Taking with the rook, knight f7 is the smothered mate again. And if you take with the knight, we see the same move. Beautiful smothered mate variations in this game. So after queen takes f7, we cannot take that queen. Smyslov saw that and gave a check. King d2, and now he took the queen, because there is no rook takes d8 anymore. The king is in the way. Kasparov shows one other variation. Instead of taking on f7, you can take on d1 with check first, rook takes, and then take on f7. But then there is knight takes, king g8, and knight takes d8. And this is even more hopeless, explains Kasparov. White has an extra piece. In the game, as mentioned, Smyslov took the queen on the 20th move. Knight takes check, king g8, and now Tal takes the queen back. King takes f7, and the smoke has cleared. White has an extra exchange and a simply, technically winning position. Let me show you the remaining moves. Knight e5 check, king e6, and there goes another pawn. Knight e4 check, king e3, bishop b6 check, and bishop d4. And on the 26th move, Smyslov resigned. He's an exchange and a pawn down and has no compensation or outlook for counter chances. He is just dead lost. This game was awarded a special prize as the most brilliant in the tournament. And I have to give you another quote of Garry Kasparov. This game was seemingly a paradox. One of the greatest masters of his time was unable to withstand a bluff, a semi-correct, risky attack, arising literally out of nothing. But remember that we're talking about the year 1959, when the leading players had pretty well forgotten the traditions of the old romantic school and were accustomed to thinking in general categories, and few believed that such an excessively concrete approach to the game could succeed at the very highest level. Tal rid us of these superficial impressions. He forced his opponents to constantly calculate variation throughout the game, and at that time many were unaccustomed to doing this. And indeed, in this game, Smyslov was not able to do this and lost in a spectacular fashion. Tal went on to win the Candidates Tournament, and the year after he beat world champion Michael Botwinnik in a world championship match to become the 8th official and undisputed world champion. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you will keep counting down towards the resumption of the 2020 Candidates Tournament with me. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like the video, if you like this series, then please share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.